and so delighted that you all are here. And I really hope you enjoy yourself. But I have a few people I want to thank first, before we start. This project started a while ago. When I first retired, I did a few poems about food. And one night, Margaret Wakely, who will be one of our readers, had a little party, and I just sat down in her kitchen and started reading them. And people after that said, you know, Joyce, you really should do something with those. Well, it's probably only about 20 years later. And I decided that maybe I really wanted to do something with them too. And it's been a wonderful experience to work with so many people that have helped me, because I really can't see anymore to do the computer well at all. One of the first people that helped me was as far as seeing the computer and being able to work on it is Will Wallace, and he will be one of the readers today. Then Diane Wallace, Will's mother, who has been an editor all of her life, I guess, helped me with some real editing before we even started getting into making it into a book of poems. And then, of course, beyond anything, I owe a great deal to Mary Beth O'Connor, who is my poetic editor, is also my lifesaver when I don't see things, and who has published the book, and who is here today, and will be reading several of the poems along with her wife. I will not name all of the readers today, but they are on your program, and they're all damn good. So I just thank all of you for coming and for being here. And then the next thing is, buy the book. Because we are all determined to make the New York Times bestseller. Thank you very much.
It's a privilege and a real pleasure to be here, especially a pleasure because look at you. This is wonderful that you came out for a very worthy cause. Cooking for the Lost Generation. Toclis once lived in Paris with Gertrude, her true paramour. When the exiles arrived, she escaped to the kitchen, for they often could utterly bore. Pablo Picasso might dine with Stein and discuss Cubist invention, while Alice created a sauce or a souffle, which saved her a critic's pretension. When Hemingway supped with the ponderous Stein and talked of lovers and war, Alice B. Toklas invented a meal to silence his chauvinist lore. If F. Scott Fitzgerald would feign conversation while drunk on an excess of gin, Alice B. Toklas would fashion a feast to keep them all sane and sanguine. When verbose Ezra Pound would sit and expound his array of opinions galore, Alice B. Toklas would silence his tongue with dishes he couldn't ignore. Alice B. Toklas would cook in the kitchen, providing her liberation from all the strain of the guests who were known as the endlessly lost generation.
My name is Will. Cheese. Whenever I feel ill at ease, I gain great solace eating cheese. Its flavor, either mild or sharp, revives the soul and mends the heart. A slice of Swiss upon my plate, with holes to sit and contemplate, can stimulate my intellect and make me feel less circumspect. A cheddar with a sharpened taste may raise the sat fat and thicken waist, but it can make me feel most fit when warmed with beer and called rare bit. A heated brie may help control the dark malaise within my soul, but I make sure it comes from France to never leave the cure to chance. To find my way as artisan, I may partake of Parmesan. If grated or cut in a sliver, my muse responds and I deliver. But not until I reach my dotage will I ingest the cheese called cottage. Garlic. Despite the virtues of garlic, considered by many first-rate, it can foster disdain, may cause social strain, or alter the course of fate. Considered by some too lowly and vulgar for tastes more refined, others declare, with a well-knowing air, all garlic should be enshrined. Now garlic has virtues aplenty to defend to the very death, but its fumes may offend acquaintance or friend when lingering upon the breath. That small pungent clove of garlic, whose odor is hard to explain, can break up a party, no matter how arty, if its fumes overpower the brain. To indulge in the bulb with imprudence when attending a theater night can leave you quite prone to sitting alone, to ponder the cause of your plight. Plea to a pensive bovine. O solemn cow, well underhung, who chews her cud with thoughtful tongue, how well we loved your milk and cream. We held it in such high esteem before its fatty particles became the cause for articles that warned us of its clogging power, leaving us bereft and dour without whipped cream or pie or cake, unless it was non-dairy fake. O solemn cow of endless flow, who lifts her head when mooing low, while grazing pastures, munching grain, remove the fat we all disdain from bounty held within your udder, so experts will not shrink and shudder when butter tops our day-old bread, and once again we feel well fed. Cast off the sin from fat-filled cheese, but leave its taste to tempt and please. With well-churned butter, let us braise and top our fruit with creme anglaise. Enjoy our fill of chocolate mousse, while hips and waist constrict, reduce. O solemn cow with eyes soft brown, consider how the world would crown the bovine who removed their guilt, so folks could eat, filled to the hilt with creamy richness, savory taste, and never feel they fell from grace. O solemn cow, act on this thought, that we may eat and repent not.
I'm Margaret. Caviar. How does one speak of caviar? It is so strange and quite bizarre, for when removed from the world's elite, it is fish eggs the privileged eat. But ambiance can raise the road to elegance from status quo. The serving bowl, to be precise, should rest in grandeur deep in ice, while toast points and a lemon wedge give fish eggs that distinctive edge. Some minced raw onion, sweetly pungent, makes caviar much less redundant. An egg can prove a dandy foil if it has known a proper boil. But when the truth is finally told, it's top shelf vodka, icy cold, that gives the glitter and the glow to eggs of fish or sturgeon roe. Cold vodka in a crystal glass is what gives caviar its class. Something happened.
Yeah.
Is there an on and off switch that I could have?
Yeah.
She was worried they were going to run out, so she brought batteries.
You're gonna have to trade the mic between you. We're used to that. Uh-oh.
She can borrow mine. She just had a double. She just had a double counter.
And I'm not used to not being able to see up close. Oh, these are some.
They're only 150.
That's okay. Much better. Much better. Much better.
An old question. Debated now and argued then. Which came here? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Closer.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, this is interesting. You know it, but I don't know. An old question. Debated now and argued then, which came first, the egg or hen? Philosophers, psychologists, and well-renowned biologists keep up the search and play the sleuth to find the still evasive truth.
This question may seem monumental and even somewhat transcendental to experts searching for a clue. They sweat and strain and still pursue, while on this day the egg or hen could care a whit of such poor men.
The chicken from her henhouse perch doesn't care to do research of which came first, the egg or hen. Instead, she struts about her pen and clucks without a single thought of how she was at first begot.
The egg is born without much wit and doesn't care to argue it. It ends up boiled or poached or fried, or grows a chick from deep inside, which may, with time, produce a hen. Oh dear, so here we go again. Unpretentious diner. Sophisticates may eat and drink in high-class dining places and never blush or pale or shrink or get sauce on their faces. But that I know is not for me. Such atmospheres are chilling. The menus seem a mystery, ambiguous as the billing. It's haute cuisine and très gourmet, menu à la carte. I do not parlez-vous français, so I am set apart. Préfice is meaningless to me, and so is carte du jour. Observers think me bourgeoisie, but never connoisseur. The waiters all have such panache that ruin my morale. I long to ask and not seem brash, the style of Provençal. The sternly steward of the wine is sovereign with decree. He speaks of vintage, grape, and vine, and makes a wreck of me. The maître d' ignores my eye. The busboard skirts my table. I think that I am going to die. I wish that I would. Is it not working again?
You can just stand up.
Strike three. Okay. Terrible. I'm sitting in Moosewood thinking of you. We never came here because I knew as soon as we entered, your eyes would widen at the sight of a bar with only 8 stools. Perhaps a single male perched at the end, his ponytail limp, tattoos swirling up his arms, a single gold earring. You'd ask, when did you open this place? And I would smile. Oh, years ago. You might agree to be led to a table where you would order a double martini. And I would too. I would study the menu with interest. You would roll your eyes at me. Sigh. Only fish, vegetables, beans, rice. Who dreamed up this menu? When the martinis arrived, you'd take a sip and say, who's the bartender here? Must have poured vermouth in a glass and splashed a little gin. And then mutter, doesn't know an olive from a lemon rind either. I would offer brightly, they have very good salads and really fine, warm bread. And did you notice the vegetarian lasagna with cheese and tofu? The waiter would arrive to take our order, and you would ask for the bill. Walk past the bar again, where the young man with the tattoos would wave and say, "Keep well." We'd head up the street to the usual place where you would have another martini, a baked potato with sour cream, and a thick porterhouse steak.
Hi, Mary Beth. Stand out here. I'm Bruce Bennett, and I've been an admirer of Joyce's poetry for a very long time, and also we met through the Healing Muse, which is a magazine which many of you know, and probably one of you have published it. The Healing Muse launched its new issue about a month ago, and Joyce was there for the reading. In fact, I drove her and Tish up to Syracuse for the reading, and I read her poems. She had forgotten her hearing aids, but afterwards she said to me, "Thank you, that was a wonderful reading." And I said, "But you couldn't hear me." And she said, "I saw you." And I said, "But you can't see me." And she said, "I read your lips." So you should never try to put Joyce in. And also, many of the poems that have been read are very funny, humorous poems, as well as some serious ones. But when you read the book, you will see that there's some wonderful and very moving, serious poems, and I'm lucky enough to have a couple of those. Was that the last of Buffalo? When that plate fell yesterday, fragmented like pieces of the past, was that the last of Buffalo? The corner grocery store with cream-filled pastries open in a cardboard box, long sausages hung low from hooks above our heads, and breads still warm with oven life snuggling on their racks. And in some kitchen, hidden from our view, the smell of a ragu rose drifted out the door and claimed our noses. We lived in 3 low rooms, up 2 long flights of stairs. Do you remember them? We sat together, almost touching, dipping still warm bread in garlic-flavored oil while pasta steamed beneath a thick red river, and ate at last those pastries oozing with their almond custard cream. I wonder, when that plate fell yesterday, made in Italy, it said, deep hollows all around the edge to hold the deviled eggs. When the plate fell yesterday, was that the last of Buffalo? Or did it die with you so long ago? Corn on the cob. Better than money in the till, better than sirloin on the grill, better than vodka's Kettle One, better than telling Trump you're done. This corn you eat, fresh on the cob, now that's as close as you'll get to God. I don't know if that's a serious poem. Forgetting. And the title is the first word. Forgetting is not easy. I see you spread butter on the last light brown remnants of your pizza crust. Watch you comb your hair, slowly stray strands flatten, smoothed in place with long fingers. See you even out the edges of your tie, fingers deft and swift to form the knot, pull it tight. I smile at the careful chef making scrambled eggs, low heat, golden fat, long, slow minutes, careful stirring. Forgetting is not easy, but yesterday, and with no warning, I knew your birthday had slipped by.
Hi, I'm Jeremy, at the table. The vagaries of man and food cause me to smile and sometimes brood. For some, a stint before the table is one long slurp to make them able to keep their hunger pangs at bay and nourish bone and weakened clay. Their spoon is raised, the head's bent low, as though attacking deadly foe. The mouth expands without forethought, the food is swallowed and forgot. They eat their meal without gustation, not to mention conversation. Then there are those who sit for hours discussing food and all its powers. Haute cuisine is life and death. It sparks their blood, gives them breath. Each flavored, nuanced, subtle smell unleashes passion, casts its spell. They savor taste upon the tongue, discuss from where the flavor sprung. Their lives are made, some say defined, by what they ate and where they dined. They never heard the term fast food, if so their minds would come unglued. So I sit and sup my gruel and ponder, which the bigger fool? Mr. Goldberg and the clam. Mr. Goldberg sat and thought about the clam and what it ought to do to be more sociable and therefore more approachable. He knew if clam would spread a bit, that it would be a fine tidbit. Since clam knives were so hard to use, he thought he might try charm and schmooze. Oh, little clam, just wide open and view the lovely world outside, the universe of sky and air, the wonders of the here and there. But Clam was silent and stayed well within the safety of his shell. He feared that if he spread a crack, he might end up as Goldberg's snack. Now, Mr. Goldberg told the clam, "You think because I am a man that I will rush you down my hatch, that I would eat you with dispatch." The clam, from deep within his shell, thought, "Goldberg, sir, I hear you well. If you should dip me in hot sauce, then I would end a total loss. And buried deep in your inside, for me, a clam-like suicide." Then Mr. Goldberg tried a tack that was somewhat based on fact. He said, "Dear clam, I am a Jew, and therefore I cannot eat you. My mother raised me Orthodox. My conscience says I must eat lox." The clam was silent, deep in thought, as clams will do, intense and taut. He wondered, what is orthodox? Were such things true or paradox? Now, Goldberg, no psychologist, nor well-informed biologist, explained, "My mother taught me well, I cannot eat food from a shell. Since you have neither scale nor fin, you are a dietary sin. So have no fear, my clammy friend. I do not wish to bring you end." Poor clam began to acquiesce, which was unwise, I must confess. He thought Goldberg was quite a gem, and what he said was what he meant. So Clam, who was a little neck, to himself, "Oh, what the heck, this guy sounds nice and quite sincere, so I will spread apart and peer." And then Clam opened up his shell to look at Goldberg long and well, and ended up a clam casino, unknown in Vegas or in Reno. I feel like you wrote that for me. Meals of memories. Imagine this. A wrinkled, aging critic, cool, analytical, reliving youthful love affairs, sumptuous meals, anxious now to lift the spoon, place remembered taste against the tongue, pleasuring both appetite and time. I take a bite, see moonlight covering newly blooming earth, young bodies wrapped in ecstasy, knowing morning will appear, all damp and cool with dew. I see their youth press on, oblivious of time, intense and hot as burning mustard seeds against the tongue, until worn out, passion spun. They rise and turn to catch the light of blinding noonday sun. Fork touches plate, picks another bite, real, savory, warm against the lips, not chiseled from a frozen box or dated with a stamp of faded blue. I drool with joy. This taste of food has brought me youth again. I recognize the year, time of day, place, the oval table, evening shadow lights, all in a flash of scent and sight. Smells drift back to take me in, make real again those endless meals I memorized with you.
Sure.
Joyce is open to taking some questions, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, if anybody wants to ask me anything, that's wonderful. But I also have something that I forgot when I was talking earlier. When I was doing my thank yous, there was one person I truly wanted to thank, and that happens to be Bruce Bennett. He took an almost old lady and said to her, "You better try to get published." And so I did.
Joyce,
Yes,
some of us, it's Kathy over here.
okay.
Some of us know the story of how you first came to love poetry.
Oh,
And
yes.
some of us don't, so maybe people would like to hear that.
Okay, I thought maybe that it was mentioned slightly in the introduction, my introduction, but I will tell you if anyone would like to know. This is very true. I think I was in 3rd grade, and I went to a one-room schoolhouse, and we were going to have a test in the multiplication tables. And there was no way in hell I was going to take it. And so, being even then, I guess, attracted to acting, I pretended I was sick. And it must have been okay because my mother was a school teacher and she didn't fall for that sort of thing very often. So anyway, we spent the day, I spent the day in bed. She was very solicitous, brought me food, so on and so forth. And at one point, she brought me 2 books. And she put them down on the bed and she said, you know, try reading these if you get bored. And they were called Poems Teachers Asked For. I still have them. And I started reading. And it was the first time in my life that I realized words could rhyme and there could be rhythm in a sentence or a line. And I loved it. The only problem was, at the end of the day, there was a knock on the door, and it was the teacher from the one-room schoolhouse. And I heard her say to my mother, "Where was Joyce today?" And my mother said, oh, she was terribly sick. I've had her in bed all day. And the teacher said, I don't think so. And my mother got a bit indignant. And she said, well, what do you mean? The teacher said, well, we were going to have a test in the multiplication tables. And I don't think Joyce wanted to take it. So my mother came into me, and I really remember this. She looked down at me in the bed, and she said, Joyce, were you sick today? I said, no. She said, then why did you say you were? I said, because we were going to have a test in the multiplication tables, and if you think I'm going to fill my head full of that stuff, you're crazy. And to this day, I swear to you, I have not learned them. I've never felt the need to learn. I was a registrar. I never learned that. Now, of course, you can say they did have adding machines and all, whatever they call those things. But that wasn't the point. I add. I don't multiply. Well,
I've got one. I got one. This is Lisa all the way in the back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Since you published the book, is there a food that you are realizing you haven't yet written about that you're really wanting to write about?
Oh, yes.
What is it?
I don't want to tell you. Because I've only got a few poems done, and I really do. I couldn't stop writing if I wanted to. And I really mean that. I've written all my life. Whenever there's been a crisis in my life, and I seem to find those all the time, or it's stress, or just looking around me at so many things that are meaningful to me, from people to nature to life itself. I couldn't stop writing. So that's the way it is.
Right.
Any more?
Where do you get your ideas from?
Just kidding.
I think every poet, not just me, I think every poet, for instance, when you go to bed at night, be sure to have a pencil and a piece of paper right beside you. Because if you get that idea, if that sentence comes into your head, or you have that emotion go through you, you better be able to put on the light and write it down. Because when you wake up in the morning, it won't be there unless you do. Yes.
Do you remember any of those poems, or maybe one or two lines of the poem that you read when you were not sick in bed?
Not sick in bed.
When you were not doing this multiplication table, when you stayed home.
When I was at home and when I was a child?
Yes.
Yeah. When my mother gave me the two books,
Yes.
I didn't put them away when I got out of bed. There's one, I wish, it's by Walt Whitman. About I can't remember that one right now, but I used to dance to it too. When I would read it to myself and dance to it. Oh, Captain, my Captain. Okay. That I remember I read it to myself and danced to many times. And in these two books, called Poems Teachers Ask For, there were some wonderful poets. But there were also some, and the teachers taught from these books back then. My mother taught in the 20s and before. But there were some wonderful poems and wonderful poets, but there were also some just kind of, I realize now, poets that weren't that great, but maybe they were funny, which is interesting too. And I remember one poem that I couldn't recite the whole thing, but I remember how it started. It started with, my father held me up to the moo cow moo, so close I could almost touch. And I wasn't afraid to get much. And I didn't do the last name, I can't remember it, but yes, I did read a lot of poetry after I got started.
That moo cow moo, that is stayed with you.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Right. I could tell you just one more story, which I think is interesting. When young people are starting to perhaps discover a creative process. And again, I must have been in maybe third or fourth grade. And I was raised on a farm. And we had a farm that had a creek pretty deep running through the back of it. And I wrote this poem. I mean, I thought it was a poem. I had no idea what it was, but in my head at that age, it was a poem. And I was very excited about it. So I ran down this hill, and I started crossing this creek. And my father was up on the bank on the other side of the creek cutting brush. And he saw me, and he kept motioning to go back, but I didn't. And I got across the creek and I ran up to him, and I said, "Dad, look, look." And he said, "Don't you ever cross that creek again, because like that you may get hurt. You don't know how deep the water is," so on and so forth. And I said, "Dad, but read this." He said, "Just don't do that again. It really scared me." And I said, "But Dad, it's a poem." And that is how excited I think anybody, that doesn't have to be a child, but anyone can be when they discover the creative process and what it does to them. And I think that for children and young people, it can be particularly meaningful. So if you know any young people that want to be poets, actors, artists, encourage it, because it means a lot to them. Okay, any more questions? I just want to thank everyone again for coming. It's just been one heck of a meaningful afternoon to me. And I appreciate every one of you taking the time to be here. Thank you.